Okay, good morning, everybody. We are live from the 2021 Western States 100 here in Olympic Village. It is so exciting to be back after a year off due to the coronavirus pandemic. We are back. It is 2021. We are joined by my co-host for the week, Corrine Malcolm. Corrine, say hello to the people.
Hey, everyone. Good to be back.
Good to be back. We are joined also by our first guest today, Mr. Hayden Hawks from Cedar City, Utah. We will get to you in just a second. Just want to mention a couple of people off the top who are supporting our live stream efforts all week. First of all, Hoka, one of Hayden's sponsors, has really pulled out all the stops to enhance the coverage, to enhance the experience of you guys, the fans of ultra running worldwide. So thank you so much to Hoka. Thank you also to Buff, an amazing supporter of our sport over the course of the last decade plus. They really are making all of this coverage possible. So thanks to the sponsors. Thanks to the coffee bar for being here and providing food and refreshments and coffees to our live audience here from Olympic Village. So let's get started. Mr. Hayden Hawks from Cedar City, Utah. You have made an enormous impact on the sport over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. I remember when you won the Speed Goat 50K and everybody was like, who is this guy? Now you are unquestionably one of the best in the world. This is your first time at Western States, your second attempt at the 100-mile distance. How are you feeling going into the race?
Yeah, really good. I'm feeling, I like to say humble confidence is what I'd say. You know, like I was really humbled by my experience at UTMB a couple years ago, but I'm feeling a lot of confidence going into Western States just because of the preparation that I've put in, the training that I've put in, and yeah, I don't think the block could have gone any better, to be honest with you. Super fit and really prepared for this race, I feel like.
So I know most of us struggled through the pandemic year away from racing, which I think was both good and bad. A lot of us got a lot of really good training in, but I know that you were able to race in the fall at JFK and take a big win there. Can you talk about how that might be translating to having some confidence going into the block that you've put together this spring in prep for Western States?
Yeah, I feel like 2020 actually went really well for me. After that experience in 2019 at UTMB, I kind of, got together with my, with some of my mentors, and we kind of talked about how I wanted to go forward from there, with my training and with my progression in the sport. And we started looking at, I need to go back to my roots, and my roots is speed. I come from a track and field background. It was definitely an advantage coming into the sport to have that speed and that strength. And so I kind of went back to some of that type of training where I started focusing a little bit more on workout, speed, but also keeping that vert and that volume in there as well, because volume, I respond really well to volume. And so 2020 went well. I had the win at Black Canyon, did really well at Squaw Peak 50 mile in Utah, had a good performance at Speed Goat 50K, and then capped the year off with JFK. I didn't race a lot, but I had enough racing in there and really, really good blocks that built on each other. And pretty much after JFK, I've just built block after block after block coming into Western States, and I've built off of that great block I had going into JFK.
So sticking with JFK for a second, I think, for those of us who follow the sport really closely, it was obvious how huge of a performance that was in one of the oldest ultramarathons in the United States. You broke Jim Walmsley's record there by 3 minutes, and since he has sort of emerged as one of the world's best athletes, I think that was the first time anybody has actually beaten one of his records while he's been rewriting record books all over the world in his career. So maybe talk about that with Jim being the two-time champion here at this race. How did that course record victory at JFK make you think about your capabilities on this course?
Well, I think, I've always had a lot of confidence in myself. I believe that I can be the best in the world. I really do. I believe I have the capability, and I believe that I can do it. I do. And sometimes that confidence gets me in trouble because I go out a little too hard in races, or maybe I train a little too hard sometimes. But I've kind of learned and matured over the years to be able to control that and use that as an advantage. And so I really feel like JFK gave me a ton of confidence, especially because I wasn't chasing the course record at all. I had no clue what the times were in that race. I found out, the last 5 miles that I was possibly going to break the course record.
Right.
The race director was there and he's like, hey, you're going to go into the course record. And I'm like, no, that's not possible. And he said, yeah, I think you are. And I was like, okay, well, cool. And, and when I race, when I just turn my watch off, when I don't look at time, when I focus on just my own race and racing my own race, that's when I always do the best. And that's what I've done, at races since JFK and before JFK is I just turn my watch off and I just go and I race how I know I need to race and how I've trained. And it always works out really well. So, yeah, I feel a lot of confidence going into Western States because of JFK, and I feel like it's definitely going to help me.
I think that's really interesting about kind of turning the watch off and taking care of yourself and doing your own thing. And we've heard that from some of your competitors going into this race. We talked to Jared Hazen yesterday, kind of, knowing that he needs to take care of himself to get through the race. You've tried to step up to this 100-mile distance before and, said you were humbled by the distance. Going into this race, particularly since we know that it's not going to be about time this year if we're going to have triple-digit record temps on the course, how are you looking at this race weekend, knowing what you know about the 100-mile distance, knowing what you know about yourself, knowing about turning the watch off and taking care of yourself? How is that going to translate for you on race day?
It's never about time. That's what I've realized with ultra running. It's never about time. The times come as you just focus on keeping care of yourself and running your own race. Most of the course records that I've broke over the years have come when I turned my watch off and didn't care about the time. When I've actually chased times, I haven't broke course records, to be honest with you. I get anxiety, I stress myself out, and then I end up falling apart in the race. And so I'm going to do that at Western States this year. I'm not going to care about the time. I don't care if I run 18 hours or 20 hours. I'm focusing on getting the win. I'm focusing on, first I'm focused on finishing. Finishing's the number one thing, and getting that 100-mile underneath my belt. But I think the other thing is I do believe that I can win, and I believe I can do that if I just focus on myself and don't care about the time and do what I know I can do.
I love that. It really is never about the time. It's all about how you compete and then ultimately where you place. And this year is going to be a difficult year, it looks like, temperature-wise, and I love your approach and, the confidence that you have in yourself. And I think that's something that's also really interesting for those of us who are fans of yours and fans of other people in the race. We talked to Jared yesterday, and he very much said that this year is all about going for the win for him. And I'm just curious about how it is that you cultivate that confidence in yourself. Is it something that comes naturally to you? Is it something that comes in training? How do you go about getting to the place where you can believe that you will and can finish first?
Yeah, I've always had a lot of confidence in myself, like I've said, but I do have doubts sometimes, especially when, I always say this, 2 weeks before the race, I don't get anxiety on race day. I don't get anxiety actually before the race. I get anxiety 2 weeks out. I start questioning myself 2 weeks out. Have I done enough? What can I do? And then what I'll actually do is I actually look back on my training. So, one of the reasons I record everything on Strava is so I can go back and look at my blocks and see exactly what I've put in and all the hard work I've put in. I sit there and I visualize some of the workouts I've put in and just the pain that I've put myself through to get to this point. And honestly, the training gives me a ton of confidence. I've had a really good training block. I've fully committed myself to this block, and I'm all in. Just like you're out in Mammoth training for Hard Rock, all in. I went to Flagstaff for a month to train in the Grand Canyon, to get out there with Jared Hazen and Jim Walmsley, and to go all in. And every little aspect of my training for this block and for blocks to come, pretty much the past year, has been all in.
So describe a little bit about that, because I think people here would love to hear you talk about going to Flagstaff and training specifically for the race with guys who have performed well here on the course. You mentioned Jim and Jared, the two fastest men to ever cover the 100-mile distance between here and Auburn. What was that month like training with those guys in Flagstaff? And any specific examples of runs you guys did would be really fun to hear about.
Yeah, the main reason we went to Flagstaff, we wanted to mix it up a little bit. Where I live in Cedar City, Utah is perfect for training for Western States. It really is. It's absolutely perfect. It's exactly like it is here. maybe a little hotter actually. But I went to Flagstaff to get into the Grand Canyon because I really do believe the Grand Canyon is one of the perfect places to train for Western States. You can get the heat, the change in temperature, the vert, everything. And I went out there and I got into the canyon almost, I think, 10 times, at least in a month, and really did some awesome runs. I did a rim to rim to rim out there. I did a lot of runs out to Cottonwood and back, 30 milers in the canyon, and was just really getting strong and tough. And I did a lot of runs with Jared Hazen specifically, and Jim Walmsley, a few with him as well. And I feel like you can learn from everybody. Like I really look up to you, Dylan. Like I really do. And I'll send you questions sometimes, on Instagram and stuff. I like to be a student of the sport and learn from those that have ran the races and learn from those that know a lot about the sport. So that's what I did is I went out there and I asked questions to Jared Hazen and I asked questions to Jim Walmsley. They're friends. They're competitors. I want to beat them on race day for sure. But I also think I can learn a lot from them. And I think everybody can be a mentor. And if you're a student of the sport and you're always trying to learn new things and get better, that's how you're going to progress in this sport.
So speaking of, being good friends with Jared Hazen, Jim Walmsley, I know we spoke with Matt Daniels yesterday. I know that you guys are close as well. Obviously you all want to win, which I think is, the definition of being competitors. But you all are also very good friends, and you use each other as mentors. So what will it be like for you on race day, knowing that you're on the starting line with these guys who you trust, you want to go get a beer with afterwards? Does that bring you confidence? Does that bring you comfort? How will you utilize that energy on race day, knowing that they're with you?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to compete against them. Matt Daniels, me and him talk almost every day. We text back and forth about things, bouncing ideas off of each other all the time. But I want to beat Matt, just like he wants to beat me. And that's the cool thing about this sport is we're friends outside of the race. But when it comes to race day, we're fighting each other and we're making each other better along the way. That's the thing is when you fight somebody and you're going after somebody, and that's why we're such good friends is because we've made each other better over the years by fighting against each other in certain races. And I think for my game plan, I guess, is the race doesn't start till Forest Hill, right? Maybe even a little past that. The first 80 miles I want to be under control. I want to keep it fairly easy, and so that might be striking up some conversations with Matt Daniels or Jared Hazen or whoever else if I'm running with them, having a good time. And then at 20, 30 miles to go, game on. We're going after it, and we're going to fight as hard as we can to the finish line.
It's beautifully said, and I think something that those of us who've been in the sport a long time cherish about it is just the fact that we can be really good friends with our competitors, and we can hope for the best for them and still compete so much. And I think that's part of what Corrine and I are so excited about doing this week and this weekend is sharing that with people who aren't as familiar with the sport, telling the story about that camaraderie that is shared both in the professional field and also, at the back of the pack as well. So Hayden, you alluded at the beginning of our conversation to when you dropped out at the UTMB a couple of years ago. It was your first attempt at 100 miles. You've had some troubles at Trans-Gran Canaria, TDS, but you have won Lavaredo, you've won CCC. But if you can point to any vulnerability in your game, it has been the long distance races. You haven't made it to the finish line of a 100-mile race yet. How have you worked towards building more confidence in your ability at the long distance races?
Yeah, to be fair, I've only tried one. So, sometimes it takes more than one try, to get good at some of these things. My first 50K went well, but, 100 miles, total different beast, and so that's for sure. I would say, I actually love bad races. I posted about this the other day. I'm very grateful for bad races. I'm very grateful for bad decisions that I've made in my career because I've learned so much from those bad decisions in those bad races. I would never be prepared for Western States if it wasn't for my dropout at UTMB 2 years ago because I had no respect for the 100-mile distance. I thought, to be honest with you, and this is going to sound maybe kind of lame on my end, but I thought UTMB was going to be easy. I was like, oh yeah.
Because you're running slow? Or?
Yeah, kind of. I'm running slow. I've won CCC, right? And so I'm like, oh, I won CCC. And honestly, that CCC performance was the easiest race I've ever done in my life. Everything clicked. I had no down points. I felt amazing the whole time.
Right.
And I was like, oh, UTMB is going to go the same way. Like, it'll be easy. You like, Jim Walmsley's not here. Francois Dehane's not here. Killian's not here. I don't got to worry about those guys. I'm going to win this easily.
So again, it goes back to respecting the distance.
Had no respect for my competitors. And I was just kind of like, like I've learned from that, and I've really realized that I can never go into a race like that. I need to go into a race preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. I know it's going to hurt at Western States. I know I'm ready. I'm so hungry, actually, to feel pain. I want to feel pain. I want to embrace that pain. It's been too long. And I really am excited for that at Western States is I'm ready to hurt. And to be honest with you, I didn't have that going into UTMB. And, I've done a lot. Like I said, I've fully committed myself to doing all the little things. A lot of the reasons I had issues on the longer races was I had hydration issues. I went into a state of hypernatremia because I was putting way too much salt into my system and not enough water. And since then, this whole year, I've done 4 sweat tests to dial in exactly how much sodium to water I need going into a race like Western States. I've done the strength training. I've done the cross training. I've done every little thing that I need to do going into this race.
It's beautiful, Hayden, and it's what behaving like a professional means. And I think everybody who knows you knows that you carry yourself as a professional and that you are approaching this race with a little bit more respect. I think we're really all excited to see that formula come to life on Saturday. We wish you nothing but the best. Big round of applause for Mr. Hayden Hawks.
Thank you.
We'll be back in just a couple of minutes with last year's second place women's finisher, Brittany Peterson.
They might not see it that way, but.
So if I'm not mistaken, your 2019 Western States was your debut 100, and then you went to, oh no, you did Leadville,
That's right, yep,
that's
yep.
right, yeah, I forgot about that. But so I guess what I was getting at though is the Superior Hiking Trail being a 300-mile adventure, do you think that sort of seasoned you a little bit better to handle the stresses of the 100-mile distance? Because as you ascended within the sport, you were much more focused on sky running races, which are shorter, steeper, more technical. And Western States obviously is a longer, flatter, more runnable race, comparatively at least. How do you think the Superior Hiking Trail helped you to sort of maybe get a little bit stronger for the 100-mile distance?
You know, I think just mentally, really, like 300 miles, it's doing the 100 3 times. So I'm trying to channel some of that, but it is such a different thing because it's so slow. The intensity is obviously low, so you can eat a lot more, but it's a good lesson on just really dialing in nutrition, hydration, obviously just being in the pain cave for so long. It feels so long ago, but I think, I'm going to try to channel that of like, it's only 100 miles instead of 300 miles, but the intensity will be a lot different.
And then this spring, we got to watch you throw down at Black Canyons and win by almost 30 minutes. And I feel like it was well within yourself that you went in, you already were in the race this year, which I think is nice to go into a competitive race with that already in the bank. But can you talk us through, going to that race, using it as part of your prep for Western States this year, maybe if you took confidence from it, kind of how that played into the Western States build-up plan?
I think, I've heard a lot of people talk about, they needed a race to kind of dust off the cobwebs. And for me, like my last formal race was CCC, which nutrition didn't go super well. So I was like, I need to retackle the 100K, obviously get back into competitive racing, be around that atmosphere, dial in nutrition, hydration. I was super nervous because I guess it was there was no pressure, but there was a lot of pressure from myself on I knew what I was capable of, and it was just more of that like fear of executing. But I think, like Hayden just said, CCC for him was the race that just everything clicked and went super well, and that was Black Canyon for me, which was, a super nice confidence boost going into Western States.
So the trick is then not feeling like you've got everything figured out and that you approach Western States with a humble attitude and a beginner's mindset. But I want to ask you something that we talked about with Hayden as well, and that is just the camaraderie in the women's field, in the professional field, and really in ultra running in general. Billy Yang cut together a really cool sort of interview both with Claire and yourself, where you both added your perspective about the 2019 race and how you both really feel about each other as competitors. And I thought it was really beautiful. So maybe if there's a way that you could kind of describe the camaraderie within the women's race, how you guys feel about each other, how you guys support each other, and then ultimately how you compete.
Yeah, I think like Western States training camp, there's a good group of us women, and it was just so fun to like share stories about like Casey. She has so much history at this race, and she's like, I've had every experience at Western States, the highs, the lows, the in-betweens, where I feel like that's just valuable information that I can glean as far as if I'm feeling, some heavy weight on my shoulders from last year, just to let go and really just enjoy and embrace the process. And I feel like the community, like there's just so much love and camaraderie and support, whether you're on the top of the world or whether you're feeling like you're crashing at the bottom. And I feel like, every year this race is so competitive, but there's just this like lifting everyone up type spirit. And that's really what it's about. But then you get on race day, and I think there's a good part of this race where it is just kind of more jovial or like build each other up, and then you get to the dirty part at the end, and it's blood, sweat, and tears, and a few grunts here and there, and I mean, and like with Claire, she burned me so good after Pointed Rocks, and I still just look at that like it was such an honor to witness that much grit, and like maybe someday I will be able to dig to that level, and it was just really inspiring. So even though it stung just a teeny bit seeing her hold the cougar last time, but that was like the only moment of like, like darn it. But really it was like, wow, what a celebration. I'm super excited for both of us.
So speaking of training camp weekend, you got a very good taste of what this course runs like in the heat.
Yes.
You all had a very hot Memorial Day training camp weekend. So in 2019, we were treated to a nice, cool year by all accounts. How are you looking at now, particularly with that experience on the course in the heat back in May? What are you gleaning from that, taking forward from your past experience in the race, and then looking at the weather forecast this weekend? How are you approaching the heat, trying to tackle the heat, running with it this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, just approaching it with a totally different approach than 2019, knowing that it's going to be hotter. I mean, I was ready for it to be hot 2 years ago, but then I kind of joked afterwards, like, I didn't get the true Western States experience. So I jinxed us, I guess. But I think, the main thing is really just being smart, being moment to moment, not getting too far ahead of yourself, like really paying attention to how you're feeling in that moment, whether it's cool and you're running a little harder maybe, but still knowing what's to come and making sure that you're just within yourself. I think training camp was really awesome that it was hot, and we've had some good experiences of just what that's going to do to each runner out there, and I feel like it's exciting for this year in the sense that, it's a lot bigger of a gamble this year. A lot more can go wrong, and I think that's the fun part about it is the problem solving along the way and just really being within yourself and figuring things out. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So speaking of training weekend and your training in general, we're having your coach, Paul Lind, on the show tomorrow, and we'll obviously talk to him about this as well. But I wondered just maybe how things are similar and how they're different in terms of your preparation for this year's race compared to 2019.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you can look back and there can be good things from that, and then there can be like head case things from that, where 2 years ago I was actually kind of injured through March and April. So I was on a bike and Ultra G until like early May, where I think that actually builds a ton of confidence for any race now in the future, because it's like I had a 6 to 8 week buildup, and that was all I needed, and it probably prevented overtraining or other things. So this year I feel like training has been similar in a sense of, speed early on, hill focus early on, and then really just transitioning into volume. So I feel like, I don't have the speed I did for Black Canyon, but at the same time that's, that can hurt you in some regards. So I have more of the endurance, and we did a peak run similar to what I did 2 years ago, and that went really well, and in fact better than 2 years ago. So I feel like it's fun to compare, but it's also, you can't compare apples to apples. And yeah, so I feel good about the things that are a little different and the things that have gone similarly.
So I know we've talked to a lot of people about patience and running their own race, obviously, and I know that you're going to be gritty at the end, as gritty as you can be. But what are you taking from your past experience on the course and knowing, you got the high country, the canyons, and then kind of that push to the finish? How are you approaching each of those sections individually? And I know you did your peak, when she talks about peak run, just so everyone knows here, it was a 55-mile run? 52-mile run on the course not that long ago, so she really knows what's coming this weekend. So how are you going to approach the high country, the canyons? Is there a mindset or a mantra that you've got going into those sections?
I'm preparing. Like 2 years ago, it was easy to be within my own race because I was running in third or fourth pretty much all day long. I'm anticipating potentially some women going a little faster this year, especially without snow in the high country. So I'm curious, because I've only been up there race day 2 years ago, which we kind of do on purpose because it's just so beautiful up there, and there's no snow this year. So I feel like it'll be totally different, and I'm hoping that it's still a little like rocky and rooty and technical, where 2 years ago I felt like the snow really was a help to me. just being comfortable on it and able to move efficiently. So I'm hoping that despite no snow, it'll still be a really good section for me, just using my strengths of the technical aspects. But at the same time, anticipating the no snow will be a game changer for kind of the front of the race. So I think one of my mantras is "you are okay." You know, like if I'm in a different position, which I'm kind of anticipating, to not panic and to still be comfortable with where I'm at and know that, you know, really you got to be able to run fast at the end of the race and manage the heat and all of those things that I know I can do, and I guess mentally I'm preparing to do.
Beautiful. You are okay. I love that.
Yes.
So another thing that I think is pretty unique in terms of this year's race as it relates to you specifically is that your partner Cody is also running. He earned his golden ticket at Bandera in January this year. And I just find that to be a really unique situation. You know, if I was in the race, I would absolutely want my wife there to sort of like, you know, be there to support me. And you guys are both in the race and both have big aspirations and goals for yourself. How do you guys support each other this race week, and sort of what's the dynamic with you both being in the race?
I mean, first of all, like Cody's right back there, so congrats,
Hey,
Cody.
Cody.
It's super exciting. You know, I think I kind of joke like, you took my pacer, you know, darn you. You know, but at the same time, I took his pacer, so it's been super awesome. I think we have to be careful of just like race week and pent up energy and nerves and things like that, of like we're giving each other some space at times when we need it and then building each other up. You know, I'm like, do you feel the niggles? Yeah, okay, that's normal then. You know, but I think just talking to Paul yesterday, like he's super proud to have like Cody there, obviously. And 2 years ago, I stood next to Paul on the start line when he was there shooting the gun to start the race. And this year it'll be Cody next to Paul, and then me next to Cody, and then Emily, Paul's other athlete, that's running next to me. So just a really special, different year where I'm super pumped about the people I have supporting me, where I was just telling Paul again, like, get to Forest Hill, which my mantra 2 years ago is get to Cody, get to Cody. And it's like I have Cole Watson pacing me there. So I'm like, I feel like he's so similar to Cody. So I'm like, maybe I'll still be chanting like, get to Cody, like pretend, sorry Cole, but like pretend Cole is Cody, because I just feel like that vibe is super similar. So I feel I'm really excited. It'll be hard to not have him there, but I have super awesome people in my corner that, and then hearing about his journey along the way, I think will just be super energizing anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you gonna get updates on Cody throughout the race, and vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, I had joked, because I mean, you get into an aid station and everything I had been perseverating on for miles before just goes out the window. So my first thing will be for my crew is tell me how Cody's doing.
Awesome. Beautiful. I love it. Well, Brittany, it's so awesome to be able to sit down and chat with you. It's so cool to hear your attitude, being the returning second place finisher, being so inspired by Claire Gallagher, 2019's champion, the sportsmanship that's involved, your own competitive spirit, how you're training. It's all really fascinating. I really appreciate you sharing it with us and our live audience. Please give Brittany Peterson a round of applause.
Thank you, guys, and thank you so much for doing this. This is so awesome.
We will be back in just a couple of minutes with 2015 champion Magda Boulet.
Woo.
See you in a minute.
Good.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. I put on my Hawaiian shirt, which means I totally mean business now. We are back with 2015 champion, legend of ultra running, legend of running in general, Magdalena Boulet from Oakland, California. Big round of applause.
Thank you. Thanks, Dylan.
Fan favorite. Magda, you're back at Western States. You've had a lot of success here. You've won, you finished second. You've also dropped out of the race, so you've experienced everything. You're now a board member. Maybe just start with a general description of what this race means to you and your family and why you're back to compete.
Wow. Honestly, like this race means so much to me. It's in my backyard, you know, if you can, you know, call it a backyard, but I grew up, you know, in the Bay Area hearing about this race. And for me in 2015, to toe the line at Western States as my first 100 miler will always, have a special place in my heart. So anything after that is just, icing on a cake.
So I feel like I'm just going to keep asking the pandemic question, and I know you pretty well. I live in San Francisco, Magda, and I feel like we're buddies.
Yep.
And I know for you, things shut down. You live in a small house with a husband and a high schooler now,
Yeah.
and a dog.
And a dog.
How was, I know when you got the spot in to come into the race in 2020, I know there's a bunch of excitement building, like, okay, I'm going to go all in for this thing. I'm excited for it. How did that year delay of this race affect your mindset, affect how you're thinking about coming back again now that we're coming back to life in racing?
Right. Well, I would say that, we're going a little bit back here, but when I was preparing for the 2020 race, was super stoked, and, all the races got canceled, and I quickly shifted to, I wasn't really disappointed that I understood why this was happening, was the right thing to do. But I quickly shifted to okay, what can I do? What fun things can I do in running that maybe I wouldn't have a chance to do? So Everesting was something that I did around this time last year, and that was a sufferfest, and it was fun. I did it on a really short half a mile. Wow, was it even a half a mile? I don't think it was even half a mile long, but pretty close to half a mile length on Mount Tam. Beautiful stretch, and that that just kind of put a different spin on what I could do. Well, professionally, things got a lot harder at work, and that really, it really put a twist on what the rest of the year was going to look like. And leading up to this race, it's been a challenge balancing everything. Being in a small 850 square foot house in Oakland, between the three of us and a dog. At first, it was like, yes, we're all together. I can be working on my computer, see my family. Well, that got old pretty quickly. I took my desk into the bedroom. I need privacy. And yeah, we haven't been back to the office yet full time, so it's honestly it's been a challenge. It's been a roller coaster leading up to this.
So, in this vein of challenge and balance, I think one of the things that people really admire about you is just how dynamic you are as a human being. You're a professional runner. You're an Olympian. You work for GU, you're a mom. How is it that you are able to balance those big responsibilities that you have outside of running and still maintain such big goals and remain such a great athlete?
Well, I think I've had good mentors, in sport and in life. My coach, when I was training for the Olympics, with whom I was for about a decade, under the same coach, Coach Jack Daniels, always reminded me that, it's really this journey, this athletic journey is really about people. It's the places you're going to see and the people you're going to meet. You will have medals, you will make teams, but at the end of the day, they're going to sit in a drawer somewhere. And he was so right. I didn't really believe it when I was in it, but after so many years, that's what I took away, and I chose never to compromise that in terms of, relationships and friendships, and it's a lot more meaningful at the end of the day.
So beautiful. Thank you for saying that. That's one of the things that Corrine and I are going to be harping about all week is the people in the sport, the friendships, things like that. It's really well said.
Yeah, so I know you have experience at this race, and it's, you're back for another year. What, if anything, looks different? Obviously, you're balancing a lot on the home front with the work front, with everything being a different year. What, if anything, has changed in your prep phase coming into Western States as opposed to years past?
Right. So this is my fourth time towing the line, and like Dylan said, I've had some good races. I've had a DNF, and then last time I was here, it was probably the most fun I had because it was me chasing Kat, and that was really, really a lot of fun, in the last 20 miles where I was convinced that I was going to catch her. Had that mindset, there is no way I can pull this off. Like, I was feeling so good. Well, she was feeling as good, if not better.
Cool.
And that was really a lot of fun. And leading up to this race, what has been different is I've stayed local for my training pretty much the whole time. Usually leading up to this race, I would make more trips up to the mountains, more trips to really seek out specific training, where I did because of balancing a lot more and not being as flexible, and with COVID, I did a lot of training from literally my door. So this is definitely something that makes me nervous, but at the same time, it's you do what you have to do.
So you are a proud owner of a Cougar trophy, but I want to talk more about the year that you were forced to drop out. It was the year after you won the race in 2016. I believe you were sick, but I remember I was at Robinson Flat that year, and I think you got a ride to the aid station after you had dropped out.
Yeah.
And I remember you looking just completely devastated, returning as the defending champion, ultimately having to pull out very early in the race.
Early.
How did that bit of adversity, as somebody who's been in running for such a long time and at the highest level for such a long time, influence maybe the your progression within the race and within the sport?
That's such a great question. Honestly, that year I was probably in the best shape of my life leading up to any trail race. Coming off a win in 2015, I learned a lot from that race. I really approached my training in a way that, I really wanted to improve on 2015, just improve on, how I would show up and perform. And a week before 2016 race, I showed up here to watch Broken Arrow, and I was gonna stay here for a week leading up to the race, and then came up with a really bad flu. And I spent, 4 or 5 days literally, in bed with fever. But that has happened to me in the past where I got sick leading up to a race. And, you kind of tell yourself rest is good. You basically got a little bit extra race during taper, no big deal. But having stomach flu is a little bit different, and also showing up to a shorter race is a little bit different than a 100-mile race. And that's something that I didn't have much experience with, right? So, I drew back on some of the experiences I've had in the past where, I showed up to a cross-country, 8K race after being sick for a week and PR'd because I was so rested. The race was, 20-minute long. You can pull that off. 100-mile race is different, and that was a big humbling lesson for me because I literally was confident that it's okay to be sick for a week. It's okay to have a stomach flu and not really eat any calories for a week and still show up and race a 100-mile race. Well, it was a big blow. I barely made it up to escarpment, feeling horrible. And yeah, it was pretty much, first aid station where I got pulled off by medical, and it was disheartening, like anyone, taking that wristband off your of your wrist when your heart wants to go, but your body says, I don't think so, it's not today, next time. It takes a long time to recover from that, just emotionally, right? Physically, I bounced back a week later. Timing was off, but it definitely, just put it in perspective for me to respect the distance even more. And I already thought I had respect for the distance, but and also for your own body, it was definitely a learning experience.
So right before the pandemic hit, you went out to Black Canyons, took a fall, and had to pull out of that race. Unfortunately, took a good chunk of skin out of your hand. But you showed up, I think, the next week at a local race with with the same fitness and put it together. I don't think you've raced since then.
I have not.
You have not. So so that, we're talking February of 2020.
Yes.
How are you looking at that, and how does that make you feel coming into the race this weekend?
Nervous. Really nervous. You sometimes want to have that, Rustbuster race, and I haven't really had a chance, to do that. I've had some, adventures that I, design myself in my backyard leading up to it, but it's definitely different than than having that competitive feeling that you're ready. But I'm really hoping that 100 miles is long enough to warm up. I will not be racing up escarpment. That's a given. But I'm nervous. Yeah, I'm nervous because that's that little chunk of experience that's missing, and a year and a half is a long time.
It's a very long time.
It's a long time, but Magda, you've been doing this for a long time yourself, and it should be like riding a bike to you. And I think, as we've sort of mentioned a couple of times, you're so much more than an athlete, and people have so much respect for you. And I think that was exhibited this year when you were elected to the Western States Board. I think we have to talk about that before we let you go. You were nominated to the board along with Billy Yang and Kara Teklinski. So maybe just talk a little bit about what kind of an honor that was for you as a person, as an athlete, and maybe what your responsibilities are.
Right. Well, first of all, it's an incredible honor to contribute to this organization, and I feel like the new members have so much to offer, and for me this race means so much more than just showing up and racing. I think that there are so many opportunities to contribute for me and everybody else to this race. Being on a board is one way to contribute. Bringing different perspectives, to the table, and I have so many goals that are still not fulfilled with this race. One of them is, showing up, at Forest Hill and being a random pacer for someone, pacing other people. So I'm really excited to bring a little bit more visibility, the little thing that I can do to contribute to bring more visibility to this organization and get people excited about the event. You don't have to race it to be involved, and I'm really looking forward to putting some time in and elevating this race, because it's incredible what the organization does, and it goes way beyond just putting on an incredible race.
Terrific. Magda, thank you so much for lending your beautiful perspective. Big round of applause.
Thank you.
2015 champion, proud owner of a Cougar trophy, board member. Magda, good luck on Saturday.
Thank you. I need one of the shirts too.
Next up in a few minutes, we will have the president of the board, Diana Fitzpatrick. Stick around.
Break like really fast. Now I'm like.
Okay, we are back with the president of the board of the Western States 100, Diana Fitzpatrick from Marin County, California. Before we get to Diana, yes, please, round of applause, round of applause. I also want to mention, I have just received a bit of intelligence that two-time champion of the race, Timothy Olson, who is on the PCT right now, should be coming up over the top of the ski mountain in the next couple of hours. So if anybody wants to see the Mirage, which is his trail name, head up the mountain after our show here, and you may be able to intercept him up there. Again, two-time champion. And I have a great story to tell about my interaction with Tim on the trail this past weekend. Maybe we'll get to that on Saturday during the live stream. But Diana, it's now your turn. Thank you for coming to sit with us. We've had only athletes competing in the race on the show to this point. You are now from the race organization. So a little bit different of a conversation here, but I think just to begin with, maybe just introduce yourself, what you do for the Western States 100, what your history is with the race, both as a runner and as a member of the board.
Okay. Thanks, and thanks to everyone for being here, and thanks especially to Dylan and Corrine for these podcasts and all you've done around the event this year. I am a 5 times Western States finisher. I've been on the board since 2014, and I took over as president in November of 2018. So I was president. We were heading into 2019, excited about getting the race going and starting plans, although it was pretty early. And so really the first major thing I was involved in as president was, very sadly, the cancellation of the race. But that was handled, as all things are with the Western States Board. It was really a group effort. Craig, team of directors, involved watching closely as the events were unfolding and really trying to time it with the runners and everything in mind. So that was really my first big thing as president of the board. And then since then, this has been a long, hard year. Actually, you'd think maybe a year off would be time off for our race director and the board, but it really wasn't. We got a lot done behind the scenes, and it was actually good for that. We had time to do that. There was also a lot behind the scenes of just waiting and more watching. And, if anything, more work, because we had to keep up on this, constantly changing rules of COVID. And that was actually really challenging. And the different jurisdictions and permitting agencies and all those relationships were really key. And Craig did an amazing job of managing that. We leaned on other board members for their relationships. And we're just so happy that we're here. So it was a long journey to get here, but we're thrilled.
I think we'd all agree that we are all thrilled to be here, that it's been a long journey, but we are happy that race day is approaching this year. So my question to you, you've been a 5-time finisher. What does it mean to you, and the race has been around for a long, long time. What does it mean to you, though, to be the first female president of the board for Western States?
I think that the whole world of ultra running is evolving and changing, and there's still not 50-50 at a lot of races with men and women, but it's certainly moving in that direction. And I think doing something like having a woman in a visible spot helps that, and just like it helps to have women on the board. And hopefully we will get those numbers up. A lot of races are focused on that and really looking at opportunities to help move the needle in that direction. And I think we will get there. Marathon running, it was the same thing at the beginning. Women weren't even allowed to run. And it just takes time. So, but I think being a woman president will help move things in that direction.
So just to get into the weeds of the organization a little bit, I know Western States is a not-for-profit organization. So maybe talk a little bit about the structure of the organization and how it might be similar and different from races that are for-profits, just so we can get a better understanding of how the whole operation works from the inside.
Western States is a 501c3 nonprofit, and so that means that we do have a charitable purpose at our core for Western States, that is putting on a premier 100-mile race. We have medical research and we have trail work. And we take those three things very seriously. Every year there is a medical research component to the race. This year, Emily Krause is in charge of a bone scan test that's going on. I think it's in its second or third year. And that data is collected, and then they do reports, and that's relied on really throughout the running community. And those reports are also available on our website. But I think they're really relied on mostly by other scientists and doctors and people trying to figure out medicine and ultra running and health issues. And then the trail piece is also really important, and we take that very seriously. And we consider ourselves in charge of keeping the Western States Trail open and ready. And it's not just for our event. We also do it for the Tevis Cup and for the hikers and for the runners and for other users of the course. So when we're doing trail work, we could just clear a section so it was ready for runners to go through, but actually we have to remember, well, no, it also involves people on horses, so there are branches overhanging the trail that we also have to cut, or rocks that runners could get around but horses can't. So that's a really important piece of what we do, and that goes on, maybe not quite year-round, but it goes on a lot of the year. There is trail work going on behind the scenes. And then, of course, our work towards putting on our race, which is first and foremost what we look to do and try to be a premier ultra event.
So I know you are only one piece of this board that works all together, but I think it's really important to point out that Western States as a race and as a group of people and a board, I feel, and I think this is a fair statement, that you all are really on the forefront of being a leader in our sport as far as putting into effect really progressive policies. Those include things like a stance on drug testing and anti-doping policies, as well as trans inclusion policies, which I think are really important as our sport grows and becomes a bigger and bigger venue for people to get to express themselves. And I want to know, obviously, as one person, just one portion of the board, what does that mean to you and to the board as a whole, maybe, as far as having that opportunity to set the stage for the rest of the sport to follow suit?
I think that's a really good way of saying it, that it is an opportunity, and I think we look at it that way, and we take it very seriously, that when we do something, we are a role model, and that we are doing something that other races look at closely. So it makes us better, because we know that everything we do is scrutinized, everything from our drug policy to the transgender policy we did the pregnancy policy. I would say, in a way, we look for those opportunities, and they are important, and we are kind of honored that we are in that position to be able to do that.
To stay on this subject for a little bit, I know you had a big hand in sort of putting together the anti-doping policy, and I know that's been a big investment for the race. And I wondered if you, with whatever details you're allowed to share, just sort of what kind of investment you guys put into the anti-doping side of the race to ensure the integrity of the competitive result.
That initiative was started in 2017 when John Medinger was the president. And we had a committee that worked on it for several months and looked at different models, tried to figure out how to make it work. It's challenging because there is no umbrella organization to do it. So we put together what we felt really worked well for our race and for the sport, kind of, again, as a model of something that could work. And so we devoted those energy and resources in creating the policy. We have hired, now we use Claridium, which is a world-class agency that does the blood testing itself on race day. We have 2 doping control officers, DCOs, who are at the finish line, and we have 7 or 8 of our volunteers who work. So we have a team on race day that's devoted to that. And there is, of course, the cost and expense of doing it. But we feel really good about it. It's actually worked really well, and it's been well received. The athletes who we test in general at the finish line, it's not fun to have to sit there and wait until you're ready to pee after running 100 miles.
Which can sometimes take a long time.
It can. I mean, it's challenging. Seems like, especially for the men. No offense, guys, but whatever.
Hydrate, for God's sakes.
But people are really good sports about it, and I think people just recognize that it's important to do something. We know it's not perfect, and we will continue to look at it. But for right now, it's really worked well, and we are happy with it.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you guys are this beacon in the sport. I want to kind of shift gears just for a second to focus on the runner that you are. I know that you last raced in 2018 at Western States and ran an astounding time of under the 24-hour mark. Obviously, you are a lifelong runner, which is phenomenal. Give us a little piece of advice so that Dylan and I can also run sub 24 hours, 30 years from now.
Before you answer that, we also have to say that was the 60 to 69 age group record, is owned by Diana Fitzpatrick, the president of the board. Amazing, amazing result.
For a little while.
Please answer the question. Please brag about yourself.
The question was, just how to
give us
be
advice
here.
Yeah, let us teach us, show us your ways.
I guess in some ways I feel like there is a certain amount of luck with it. Like I've been pretty injury free for most of my life. I think also I've had a certain amount of balance with the amount of training. And in the winter we tend to do a lot of skiing, so I'll do skate skiing or another sport for a couple of months and maybe get some hard training in that period through a different sport. And I guess also just staying fresh and always loving it and making it fun. And, of course, the obvious things of listening to my body. So if I ever did have anything happen, I was on it and I would stop and I'd wait until I felt better and then I would start again. And then as a 60-year-old going into the race that year, I really didn't know my prior ultra before 2018 was 4 years earlier. And I knew there was probably a very big difference between 56 and 60. Going in at 56, I was pretty confident if things went well, I would be able to be in the range of where I had been before. But as a 60-year-old, I really didn't know. So I approached it differently, just letting it happen and see what happened. And even actually race day, I didn't think I was going to get under 24, and I was kind of okay with that. And then when it started looking like I might, something kicked in, and I made it in under that 24-hour mark.
And that was a hot year too. That was not dissimilar from what the racers will be experiencing this weekend, which I think is all the more impressive to be under that 24-hour mark and that type of heat.
Amazing. So Diana, I want to talk a little bit about this sort of contrast between history and future. Obviously, the Western States is the oldest 100-mile trail race. It is the granddaddy of them all. But Western States also, as you said, sort of has a responsibility to be in a leadership position and sort of take the sport into the next generation. And I know that was sort of part of bringing Billy and Kara and Magda onto the board this year. So maybe talk a little bit about how the race is sort of trying to take that leadership position as the sport moves forward.
Well, like I said, we always look for opportunities to lead. And we're super excited about our 3 new board members, Magda Boulet, who was just on, Billy Yang, and Kara Teklinski. And we feel like they really represent, again, this perspective of people who are still running in the sport, people with hands-on tech knowledge of that is really helpful to have as a board. And we will continue to really remain open to the changes in the sport because it's certainly a changing environment. I mean, social media has really changed the landscape of what it is. And even what it means to be an ultra runner. I think before people used to do it, it was a very individual driven endeavor. And I think now there are a lot more opportunities, which is great for people to make their careers out of it. And there's sponsorship opportunities, and there's more money, and there's a lot that there really wasn't 10 years ago. And it's exciting, but you also have to, look at where you're going and be really thoughtful about your approach to all of those changes. So I feel like we're, kind of on the beginning edges of that and seeing where that takes us. And we want to be super mindful and open and see what happens.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for your service for this race. Thank you for coming to sit with us. It's an honor to be able to chat with you, and I think the race is in great hands with you in the leadership position of the board, and maybe someday soon you'll get to run it again yourself. Big round of applause for Diana Fitzpatrick. Next up, we will break our Hawaiian shirt trifecta and welcome 2-time champion Jim Walmsley to the show. Give us a second. Are we on time?
Craig's worried that there'll be a full house for you and then one person will stay for him.
Okay, we are back with the man, the myth, the legend, the 2-time champion, the course record holder, the person who sort of single-handedly has changed the sport over the last 5-6 years. Mr. Jim Walmsley, please, big round of applause for the champ. Jim, there's so much to talk about. Where do we even start? You're back. You ran 14:09 in 2019. Absolutely ridiculous. It was in favorable conditions. This year is going to be a little bit more difficult. Let's start with just sort of why you're back at Western States, what this race means to you, and what are your goals for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. It's good to see everybody, familiar faces, and feeling the energy and really excited about things. I think I had planned some time away from the race, and I was supposed to be possibly my second year in South Africa in June, down at Comrades Marathon. I was going to try to take on the road ultra scene down there, which is its own little bubble of awesomeness, but unfortunately that's fallen through the last 2 years, and I haven't had that opportunity. However, for good and bad, they canceled pretty early this year, which kind of gave me enough time to shift focus, and there was basically no question of I was coming back to Western States.
So I think something that we're all interested about, and I mean, we all saw your Instagram post, I think, yesterday, and I was really impressed with the level of kind of thoughtfulness and maturity, talking about in your approach to injury, and I think we'd all love to hear about kind of what this build-up, I think, has looked different than maybe build-ups in the past with your approach, working through some things. Can you just describe to everyone here and everyone at home what that's looked like and kind of how your thought process has been around it?
Yeah, I think I've been throwing out some feelers and probably unlock some of them on Strava soon today. So you'll see some of the runs. And
Breaking
get that
news!
out.
Breaking news on the show.
But,
Watch Jim Walmsley's Strava.
I'm excited because I feel good about it. And all things considered, I still got in a lot of training, a lot of time, a lot of vert. However, my usual fire roads, I wasn't running. I didn't really start out as long of a block. I probably had more of a 6-week focus block. That was good, but I was coming in fresh and still fit into that block, but also basically it started with 3 weeks down more towards 30 miles a week, having to back off, had some IT band problems. Kind of right when everything was good, everything was healthy, I was holding at some steady training volume, and sure enough, something just flared up out of the blue and was kind of giving it some time off, and then all of a sudden it's like it's going to be crunch time soon, and made the call that I need to back off now and basically make a plan 8 weeks out, and we'll go from there. So there was like an intro week to get back into things, and then crossed the fingers and went back into it, and just had a really great team in Flagstaff helping me out, staying healthy or getting healthy, strengthening. Seeing this good friend Wes Gregg at Hypo 2 Sports there, which like most of the pro runners see in Flagstaff, and it's been a lot of work though. It's a rewarding block to feel like I'm coming out of it healthy somehow.
So Jim, I want to linger on this subject because I think it finally makes you a little bit relatable to the rest of us, and that you struggle with some injury, things weren't going perfectly for you, and you've sort of been focusing on the little things. Is that something that maybe you weren't as focused on earlier in your career?
Yeah.
And maybe talk about how this emphasis on working with your friend Wes and doing the strengthening and PT, what sort of value you've seen in it?
Yeah, I think it's something that's more likely to be here to stay, rather than I've been lucky that I've been pretty injury prone and been able to just kind of at times feel like I'm cranking race out after race after race, and it's pretty fun. It's also really exhausting, but it's probably here to stay, and it's the things I should be doing that I've been able to get away with kind of neglecting. And yeah, as I'm getting into my 30s now, I need to be more cognizant of it, and I think the strengthening is probably the best to counteract, in my experience so far, to counteract some of the overuse injuries.
I think that's a really interesting shift in perspective. From an outsider looking in on your career, it kind of seemed like maybe not going to be here for a long time, but going to be here for a really good time type of approach. And to hear you now talk about doing the little things, kind of trying to maybe be around, taking course records, taking wins for a lot longer. How has that kind of been a frame shift for you?
Well, yeah, I think it started in Western States 2016, coming here to try to just run to my maximum ability and leave it out there, and no regrets with that. However, I think career-wise, it's evolved into finding a little spot in the sport that gives me this opportunity to do this for my job and my life and livelihood. So that's really awesome, really amazing, and I'm in a happy place with it. So it's something I've realized that's important to me to make sure I can continue as part of my lifestyle, and that means doing the little things and stuff. Looks like we're moving in some extra furniture.
Bad timing. But Jim, thanks for sharing that. And I think just while we're sort of having a retrospective on your history here at the race, of course, you came in as a young, ambitious, risk-taking athlete back in 2016, I think was your first one. This is your 5th running. The first 2 didn't go well. The second 2 were absolutely phenomenal. How are you thinking about just like your position in the race this year? What are your goals? I mean, what's left to achieve, especially because it seems like the course record would be really difficult to better this year. Is it all about being competitive and winning, or are there other things that you'd like to achieve?
I think most importantly, it's to have a good experience here. I'm looking, especially considering the training block, if I can get out of here with a positive feeling that I ran to my potential for it, that's always a really big win. I think chasing the course records got me into trouble to begin with in 2016 and 17, and it's kind of not until I backed off and said, this has gotten me into trouble, I need to just take what I can, and we're going to go out and have a good day.
We're sorry, everybody. This is quite obnoxious.
They'll be done soon. So, but yeah, just kind of taking what I can from the course and making the most of the day that I'm given. It's probably not going to be under 14:09. I think I'm pretty happy with that because I got a really favorable year to have a good day. And I feel like it's going to take favorable weather to get that time. So if it's not going to be a really good year, then it's probably not in play, which is kind of cool. And it's just like, it's still Western States. You go out, you try to win, you try to compete for a top 10, you try to place as high as possible. And that in itself is an amazing achievement and reward. And finishing in Auburn on the track is extremely special. And there's so much more to the event that is so special.
So while we're sort of on this subject, one of the themes of our conversations with other athletes has been respecting the distance. And I remember in 2016, you were already talking about the course record, and I think you were humbled a couple of times at the race. So maybe talk about how your psychology is different as you approach the race with a little bit more respect as a more mature athlete in your 30s now.
Yeah, the 100-mile distance has definitely bit me a couple times. Not just here at Western States. I've gotten my butt kicked several times across the world at this distance. So anything can happen. Every time you can have a good day at this distance, you need to be really thankful and fortunate. But at the same time, I think the mentality of challenging the status quo, challenging what is possible, is what gets you big breakthroughs. And that mentality needs a bit of a balance to really perform well at the top consistently. And that, so a little bit of me holds on to the challenging the status quo with wanting to try to do more. But I guess I've eaten the slice of humble pie enough times where maybe you don't go in guns blazing immediately and let the race come to you a little bit more. And if it's not a course record, that's totally fine too. There's amazing athletes in the field. There's great stories all around, and making the most out of your own experience in your own day is you're gonna find good results that way.
So shifting gears a little bit, something I'm super curious about is that you obviously have this hunger for, we watched you put on a show at Carbon X. We were all, I think, hoping to see you at Comrades, see what that would look like. But I also know that you seem to have a hunger for races that are in the hard rock, UTMB variety. How do you see yourself balancing those two kind of juxtaposition styles of running, moving further into your career?
I would like to shift more focus towards the UTMB hard rock style races further down my career. However, I feel like I still have enough pop turnover in the legs where I need to get the Comrades race done. I need to go after my best 100K experiences. because I feel like the leg speed and kind of the youth you need for it. But then again, there's comrades winners in their mid to late 30s that are running amazing. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know about comrades yet, so it's hard to speak on completely. But some of the road fast ultras that I'd like to accomplish sooner rather than later, because I feel like I can get the most out of myself now in that regards. Whereas the mountain ultras, I feel like I can continue to develop, and the mental aspect of those continues to play a huge factor. And you can be a better runner later in your career in those a lot of the times.
Yeah, really well said. And I think one of the things that's unique about you is that you realistically would have the opportunity to win a race like Comrades and win a race like UTMB and Hard Rock. That type of range and that type of talent is not something that comes about very often in our sport, and you've really changed the game in a lot of ways. You mentioned wanting to change the status quo, and I think one of your philosophies is to run without limits. So maybe talk about that ethos and maybe what you're trying to convey to your fans and to the sport in general.
Yeah, I guess run without limits, but I also say ignorance is really powerful. So again, you don't know what you don't know until you just go out there and try and experience. But at the same time, I think people accomplish amazing things without knowing what they're getting into, and just not putting barriers or limits on saying, well, you shouldn't go out that fast, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. And it's like, well, maybe you can. And you know what, it just takes someone being almost ignorant to saying what you should do to all of a sudden prove everyone wrong.
So we might find out later, as Strava maybe reemerges here, but it sounds like you've been running a little bit closer to home. Training's been a little bit different, a much shorter block. Were you able to get into the canyons like you normally do going into the canyon like you normally do going into this race? And if not as much, how do you think that will transpire in a very hot year this year at Western States?
No, I didn't get into the canyons much. Starting a run with the downhill was problematic for me, so I got in the Grand Canyon just twice in the last 8 weeks, which usually I'm down there almost twice a week. So that's a lot different. The longer downhills are a little less tested. But on the other hand, my vertical climbing and descending per week is higher than it's been most training blocks, so I feel like I've gotten the strength through that. The heat, it seems it'll be in the ballpark of 2018, which wasn't too long ago, and that was a good experience, but also taking what you can on the race day and not forcing it is going to be really important. I'm from Phoenix. It really helps me just embrace it and lean into it, and it's just really funny in retrospect. I like going out to college in Colorado for the first time, 18, 19 years old, and just realizing this is why runners run in the middle of the day, is because it's really nice out. It's not that hot. I mean, and then you're talking in the mid 90s at 7,000 feet, which now I think is very hot. But coming from just growing up in Phoenix, not knowing any different, thinking that everyone had summers like we did, and just not having the perspective to go like, no, Phoenix summers are crazy. But I've also gotten in some family time going to visit my sister just last week when Phoenix was in a little bit of a heat wave that people might have experienced. Well, everybody in the West really experienced a heat wave, to be honest. But usually when that happens, Phoenix is still kind of the hottest. And I lean into that and embrace it and just try to kick my feet up outdoors and enjoy the weather, the sunshine.
You were built for this race growing up in Phoenix, living in Flagstaff, where 5 of the last 6 men's champions have come from. I know you're a student of the sport as well. There's a great history at Western States of repeat champions on the men's side. You, Tim Olson, Rob Krar, Hal Kerner, I think maybe a couple of others. There's a very small group of people who have accomplished the three-peat. Yeah. I think it's Tim Tweetmeyer and Scott Jurek on the men's side.
I think Jim, the three-peat. Three-peat.
Yeah, so. Right. I think Jim King had 3 over 4 years, but only 2 have done the actual three-peat. What would it mean to you to join that fraternity of Scott Jurek and Tim Tweetmeyer, 2 absolute legends of the game?
it's really hard to jump to imagining myself in those shoes. So much has to go right between now and getting to the Auburn track. I've had my fair share of struggles trying to get to that track. So yeah, it's almost a little too soon to try to imagine. And that's company that
Here at some point. We're back on.
Check, check, check. Can people watching on YouTube give us a thumbs up or thumbs down that we are indeed live on audio? Anybody in the chat giving us a confirmation that they can hear the sound of my voice? Not yet. Check, 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 check.
I heard it.
Okay.
Woo!
Okay, should we just start over, do we think? Should we just start over, you think?
It was so good the first time.
Okay, well, let's just pick up where we left off. Craig, we're really sorry. We're new to this, you know? We're putting
First
a lot of
year.
effort into this. Maybe let's talk about this, right? We're putting a lot of effort into the new sort of race coverage, the digital experience of the fan, the live experience of the fan here in Olympic Valley. Talk about how this idea came and what importance it has for the race itself.
Yeah, well, Hoka came on as our new presenting sponsor, and they wanted to see more live coverage, so they put in some money and spearheaded this in terms of cash, and then bringing Billy Yang onto the board. As you know, he headed the committee, and the ideas changed on what this was going to look like. Each time Billy saw another Aravaipa event, he said, "Oh, Black Canyon, like, oh, the chat, it doesn't have to be really good video. It can be low quality. It's just this gathering place." And we were going to do 3 different places and start and stop the live. And then Cocodona happened, and Billy's like, "No, we're just going to go straight through. We're going to have one place where the community can come together and chat, talk about the race." And yeah, it's going to be awesome for people all over the world to get a glimpse of some of the places that we've never seen live, and to hear you two chat and geek out over Western States. The chemistry that you guys have is really special, and it's going to be awesome.
So kind of building off that idea of this is a big change for Western States to have this type of live coverage. Obviously we've had, we've all been refreshing our Twitter feeds, deep into the night hours through iRunFar's Twitter feed to try to figure out what's happening. So this is a huge kind of step into, almost a modern era of ultra running. And how do you see, Western States is obviously at the forefront of that in a lot of ways. How do you see this continuing to advance in Western States, evolving over the next decade even?
Well, we've always used the excuse that we don't have good coverage. We could say, oh, UTMB has cell coverage all the way around the mountain in all 3 countries. Western States, we're in the canyons. We have to use ham radio, whether it's digital or voice. And we've always used that as an excuse, right? So it was easy, like, oh, we don't need to do this. But we are finding ways. We have, hopefully this will happen, but the river crossing is one of our ham radio operators uses some kind of microwave connection, and there's Joe Steinmetz, our ham radio lead right there. It's like, yeah, we can get you internet down at the river. So I think we just needed the push and not just continue to use the excuse that we don't have coverage. And hopefully it's just going to get better. And some other places like the river crossing will be able to use this microwave technology, and who knows, maybe we'll have connectivity throughout the course soon. So.
Well, yeah, thanks for the initiative on that. Thanks to Hoka, who has really helped to support and bring this all to life. And Craig, you've obviously been around the race a long time, well before you were the race director. You've run the race a number of times yourself. Of course, we're heading into what's going to be a hot year, one of the hotter years in recent memory. Is there a historical analog, as somebody who's been around the race for a long time and knows all the history? What are the conditions like out on the course, and is there a year that this mirrors?
Well, we used to have in our history that it was 117 or 114 at the bottom of the canyons. You know, if you put a thermometer on the ground in the sun, it's gonna yield a pretty high temperature. So it was TJ, Tropical John, who said, let's just standardize where we get the high temperatures from the city of Auburn, the airport, the city of Auburn. And the hottest it's ever been is 104 in 1995. And it seems like once a decade, we get 100 degree or higher. I think there was, in the 90s, we had 2 years over 100. So we're right on track to get another one. I think 2013 was the last over 100, and 2018 was 98. The forecast is bouncing around between 99 and 101. So it's somewhere around a 2013 or a 2018. Not crazy. Some of the forecasts early were 107 and 108. That would have been crazy. But I will give a very detailed forecast tomorrow for all the places along the course and the times that runners will go there or go through there. So it's not going to be outrageously hot. It's not going to be in 1995. At least it doesn't look like it. But it's going to be one of the 7th or 8th hottest years in 48 years.
So as a race organization, obviously I think we all watched a devastating event take place in China. This not that long ago with weather, right? With a weather-related event that unfortunately cost the lives of lots and lots of runners. Obviously, there's a lot of responsibility with a race organization. You guys have a wonderful medical director. You guys always have a wonderful medical director. So what, as a race organization, obviously runners are responsible for themselves out there, but what do you guys have set up for runners to kind of get them hopefully safely from Olympic Valley on Saturday all the way to the Auburn track?
It is definitely a tragic event, and it's pretty hard to imagine 21 people dying in one event. Maybe 1 or 2 people, okay, yeah, you could see that, but 21 people, it's hard to fathom how that could happen. Western States evolved from Tevis, the horse ride, and a lot of the protocols that were implemented in Western States came from Tevis. Like we had the weighing of the runners, and we used some kind of objective criteria, 3, 5, and 7% weight loss. So there was a lot of that stuff already built in, really to protect the runners from its core. Right? We have 10 medical stations where we don't use the scales anymore, but we have very knowledgeable medical folks there, helping runners, evaluate whether they should continue or not. We don't pull runners like we used to. Horses can't tell you, hey, I feel like crap, my kidneys hurt. They can't talk. Runners can't. They're human beings. They can talk, where they can tell you what's going on. So it's been a shift to don't have medical folks out there who have the power to pull you, and then that causes runners to lie or do stupid things like put rocks in their pockets. Right? Hopefully the medical folks are now allies of the runners, and they're not someone to fear. They will help you solve the problem. For heat, which is normal for us, even if it's a normal 90-degree day, it's hot, we have ice all over the course. I just tweeted that we have 32,000 pounds of ice ordered for the race. We have them staged in 4 different trailers. That works out to 5 pounds of ice per runner per aid station. So we encourage you to use your buff your buff neck gaiter, and put it in your hat, put it in your bras. Use the ice and the creeks and the rivers. When you go to the bottom of the canyons, there's a reason they're canyons, because there's water. So get in the water at every place you can. Stay wet.
I was going to ask you some of those obscure stats like ice, so thanks for preempting that question. But the heat is one challenge, sort of the remoteness of the course and the lack of cell phone service is another challenge, and you guys mitigate that stuff by doing the ice, but you also have an army of volunteers. So maybe provide some stats, and if you want, kind of shout out a few people who make this race possible, especially with the point-to-point course. It makes it a little bit more challenging, I know.
Yeah, our ham radio team, headed by Joe, again, I'm going to give Joe another shout out. That is vitally important for the safety of the runners and the execution of the race in terms of, if an aid station runs out of something or they need a vehicle to take a runner out. We have an extensive ham radio network. It's both digital packet radio, so you basically send like a light email with a CSV attachment over the ham radios, and the voice network we have everywhere. Without that, we would really be flying blind. And the aid station captains, there's 20 aid stations now, and I want to thank them and give a shout out to them for their patience this year. We couldn't tell them what their aid stations were going to look like, and I kept saying, I don't want to make decisions too early. If we come up with COVID mitigation protocols right now, they're probably going to be wrong and they're going to look stupid. And they would have. So we basically threw out all the mitigation plans that we had started working on in December. And it wasn't until just three weeks ago that we finally had our last Zoom meeting with the captains. So and they were patient,
So how many volunteers total? You said 5 pounds of ice per runner per aid station. How many volunteers per runner out on the course?
It's 4, probably 5, closer to 5 now. So 1,500. We're down to 320 runners, or 318, I think, right now. So yeah, it's probably closer to 5. It's getting closer to 5 volunteers per runner.
Okay.
5 vaccinated volunteers per runner.
Yes, okay, runners, you not only have your crew out there, but you have an additional 5 volunteers for each of you. So take advantage. How good does it feel to be sitting in a position now after a canceled year, after making a decision to go forward this year, to have run a successful training camp? How good does it feel to be back in Olympic Valley, knowing that the race is going to go off on Saturday?
It is so incredible. The first race that I got to volunteer at was the Canyons. I think you were out there. It was so awesome to be out there together, whatever capacity you were in, whether you were running or volunteering. It just felt so good. And this is the first really big race on the world scene. I definitely feel, as Diana said, I feel that the eyes of the world are watching us. We felt for a long time that we could put on a safe event. We've been advised by our medical folks, led by Andy Pasternak, making the decision to require all our volunteers to be vaccinated was a huge step. We lost some people who didn't want to get vaccinated, but overall it just made this event completely untouchable from our permitting agencies, right? Like, how do you argue with that? We did a survey at our training run with the runners. We asked some COVID symptom like everybody takes right now. And one of the questions was, are you vaccinated or have you had a prior COVID infection documented with a PCR test? 91% said yes. So 100% volunteers and 91% runners vaccinated. That's not very many bodies for the virus to transfer through or get spread. And that along with all the knowledge we know about the low risk of transmission outdoors, and that it's not by touch, it's by inhaling particles that have the virus. We're really, really happy that we didn't cancel and that everybody is here and we get to do the things we love.
So maybe last question for you, Craig, before we let you go. We know you got a lot of things to accomplish this week. You are also, I believe, a 9-time finisher of the race. When are you going to go for number 10?
Wow. So I ran it once as race director in 2017. Before that, I had 8 finishes. And 2017 was really hard. I didn't think it would be that hard, but it was really hard. It was leading up to the race.
That was
where
one of
I
the
got
harder
really fatigued.
races.
It was a hard
Yeah.
year. Yeah, it was a mud and snow year.
It was the slowest year in recent memory for the winners. So,
But it was hard. I don't think I'm going to do it again as race director. So the 10th will have to wait until I retire, and I'm not ready to retire yet. I've said it many times. When I get to the point where I don't want to innovate or I just want to do it the same way we did it last year, just because it's easy, then it's time for me to step down and let somebody younger and newer come in or with fresher ideas. And I don't see that happening yet. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know.
Well, Craig, the race is in great hands under your leadership. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the race on behalf of Corrine and myself. And yeah, we're really looking forward to it. Wish you nothing but the best. Hope everything goes off without a hitch in the next couple of days, and hope you get a little rest as well. So big round of applause for the race director.
Thank you, too.
We are now done for the day after Craig Thornley. We will be back tomorrow, 9 to 11 a.m., same spot. We've got another great group of guests. Again, finally, just want to shout out and thank our sponsors, Hoka and Buff, for breaking out all the stops to help us bring the story of the Western States 100 to the world. Thank you to the coffee bar folks. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us as well. Great food, great coffee. And thank you guys for all coming out and listening. It was a lot of fun. We'll see you tomorrow.
Nice job. Really great job. The audio, it was much better.